Hi, this is Tony Ruggiero. Thanks for listening to The Tour Coach. These are the players, coaches, experts, stories, and insights from my work on the PGA Tour at my retreats or my downtown teaching center in Mobile, Alabama. My goal is to shed light and share insights from the people who I've gotten to know and meet working on the PGA Tour and teach it through my career. And I hope this helps all of us play, coach, and teach better golf. If you like what you hear, please give us a good review and take a look at our new Dew Sweepers YouTube channel or the Dew Sweeper on Instagram, where I've taken some time to share videos of help from my teachings, travels, and journeys. So here we are, and this is a beautiful back deck of Trump Doral. We got the American flag right there. We got a great group in from Connecticut, Philadelphia, Georgia. Got Wayne Flint here to my left, Todd Green kind of back behind me. We got Dr. Greg Cartin, Julio Vegas. We got Dr. Scott Lynn, and we got my boy Kevin Kirk sitting over here. He'll be the smart sounding one. And so the purpose of the first day today, Kev, you weren't part of this, but I think it kind of would lend itself into a good one, was talking about how I think one of the things, I think people have this idea that the best players in the world do stuff a lot different or more difficult than what they do. And I said, I don't know that they do stuff a lot different. I think that they pay way more attention to detail, and I think they are way more structured and way more refined and focused on what they work on. Whereas I think that I use regular golfers, but club level golfers go to the range and they're just hitting, trying to fix the ball, and they don't have plans and they don't have structure. And then each time they go to practice putting, they do a different thing each time. And I told the story about every time I'd go to the Bears Club, I'd see Justin Thomas for 6 years doing the same 3 damn drills, and he's one of the best players in the world. And so from my experience, the best players in the world tend to find the few things that they know that work and they stick with them. So that's kind of where I was going to go with this, now that I got us rolling. So I'll start with you and get your thoughts on this, and we're going to kind of go into the Saber metrics and the stuff, and I want Greg to talk a little bit about it, and Scott and everybody kind of chip in.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Super glad to be here with you guys. And I do think that you start kind of looking at coaching and kind of what it's really all about at the end of the day. It's really about being able to move the needle. How are you going to move the needle? And there's, the problem that we have in golf is that it's so distracting. There's so many things that, data points that we can kind of point at, but a lot of them don't move the needle. And so you start kind of looking at, okay, from a coaching perspective, to your point, the best players in the world do have the capacity to be able to look through all the data points and say, okay, these are the things that move the needle for me. I'm going to pay really close attention to them. Mm-hmm. And I think in coaching, sometimes that gets lost. There's very easy to kind of look at a data point and say, something that I'm concerned about that. But the question is it or not? Will it or will it not move the needle? If it doesn't move the needle, then it probably doesn't require much attention. And so, I think that one of the things that we kind of got to is, we started adopting, some of the Saber metrics over from that was kind of if anybody got to see, that famous
Moneyball,
that famous movie Moneyball, he didn't have any money, and he got to the point where all he was concerned about was, can they get on base and can they score runs? If they can't do that, I'm not interested. And I think at the end of the day, we as coaches and players have to have the capacity to look at things and say, okay, there's a lot of data here, but what am I going to do here that's actually going to move the needle? What can I can do to kind of actually make a difference? It is player dependent. There are certain players that want very specific things, and for them, moving that needle is only taking care of that. And so as coaches and as people that work in this space, I think we have to be conscious of that, but also have the capacity to kind of look at a big set of data and figure out, okay, what is it that I'm looking at, and what's going to move the needle.
I agree with that, and I think that's one of the challenges. So we have more science in the world of golf instruction than we've ever had, and we have Scott here with us this week, which Scott does a bunch of these with me. And I think one of the things is Scott and I have worked together. He has 8 gazillion points of information on that computer, and especially the dual force plates, right? But he tells you, he knows the stuff I'm looking for, and I normally preface it when a player gets on it and say, here's the things I'm looking for, here's the thing I'm trying to get to do, and he just hones in on that piece of data. Whereas I think one of the problems, not a problem, but where people run in with all this technology is they feel like they put somebody on a dual force plate and they feel like they've got to read the student every single piece of information that comes out of that. I think that's where we do a lot of stuff. And Kevin, you're joining us next month for young coaches and developing teachers, and I think that's one of the things that's hard for young teachers. I had a young teacher the other day call me. I didn't know him. He asked for advice, and he had said he'd been to TPI, had been like 2 levels. He'd been certified in 2 other things, and he went through all this stuff, and he said that he was having trouble because he felt like he was given worse golf lessons. And I told him the same thing that Wayne and Hank told me early on, was like, I needed to write down and organize the things that I thought were important and then just stick to those for a while. And I think all the data that's out there is hard for young teachers and hard for people because I don't think people are very good at organizing it, and they just start spewing things out, right? Hoping something sticks.
Yeah, before we shift gears, and I want to talk to that point, and make sure that, I would love to hear from kind of some of the other guys here. But what I will say is that the thing that I appreciate about Scott Lynn and guys like Mark Sweeney and guys that have been around the space for a long time that are really solid scientists, they also have the capacity to kind of look at it, listen to the situation, and then be able to deliver that one thing that's going to make a difference. I watched Scott do it yesterday with several golfers and a baseball player, to be able to kind of look at the information, listen to the guy talk, and then to be able to pick one thing and give it to him. That is going to move the needle, and I think that's it, right? Well, that's the art, right? The only way that you can kind of get there is get enough saddle time. I think if you kind of look at it, listen to books like I love Malcolm Gladwell's book Blink. He talked about people that have the capacity to do exactly what Scott did yesterday, to be able to look at something, read it, and give you that one thing that's actually going to make a difference. And I think but the only way you can get there, according to Malcolm Gladwell and the people that study peak performance in coaching, is you have to have a lot of saddle time. You got to just be in there for a long, long time. I don't know how much saddle time, Scott. I'm guessing 20,000 hours minimum probably at this point. I think, Tony, you've been on the tee 30,000 hours probably teaching.
I'm sure.
I'm over 30,000. And, so you start kind of looking at people. Part of it is wisdom. Part of it is people that just have enough saddle time to be able to recognize the situation and say, I've seen this pattern before.
I've said this a million times. I always go back to this. And since he died, I probably say more of his stuff than I used to. But Hank used to have this saying. He told me one time, because I was always wanting to know the answer to the test question, right? Like I was thinking there was this answer that you had to have, right? And he told me one time, he said, you can't get 10 years of experience in one day less than 10 years, right? And that's the same. So somebody that's been teaching 3 years isn't going, no matter how smart they are, they're not going to have encountered as many things as you have, or as many things as you have, Scott, right? It's just the way it is.
So if you're talking about mastery, all the mastery models will suggest that a minimum 10,000 hours. There's arguments to be made, okay, that can happen quicker, and I've been through all those discussions. But let's just say it takes 10,000 hours, all right? That's 3 hours a day, 330 days a year for 10 years. It's a serious amount of time. So I do think that the people that impress me as I watch them, if you ask them about their background, they've done the time.
Mm-hmm. Every one of them. Doc, I want you to talk a little. Come on, you could talk a little bit about stats. Yeah,
I think what's interesting from my perspective,
the contrarian here,
being in the mental space, is the expectation management. So kids will come to me and say, I played great, I hit the ball great, but I missed like 3 10-footers. Right? So, oh, you missed 3 10-footers. Well, why don't you dig into the stats a little bit? Let's take a look at what the best players in the world do, and say, hey, maybe what you did wasn't so bad, right? So working back from the top, taking the stats, and it's great that we have access to all the stats from the best players in the world, and we can use those to help guide younger players or amateurs' expectations about what it means to play well. That, for me, that's what I've used stats for in talking to guys that I work with, young kids or developing kids or amateurs or anybody. Let's take a look at what the best players in the world do in terms of stats. And a lot of them revolve around putting, because that's an easy one to sort of mark. So maybe you didn't putt so bad.
I'm going to ask you. Scott talked about the one thing, moving the needle. I know he does that well. I always talk about simplicity, and I try to not have a student leave a weekend. I told him I don't want you to leave with more than 3 things you're working on. And Greg's big thing is about freedom, right? And so I think the less you have to think about, the more freedom you have. Do you think that's accurate? Doc?
Yeah, it's hard to say the less you have to, or the less that registers in terms of what you're trying to accomplish.
But I think the more things people are trying to do, the less freedom.
Yeah, well, if a kid goes out and the course says, I'll have to make 80% of my 5-footers today, that's a tough way to start a round. So it's a slippery slope. From my perspective, from a teaching perspective, it's much different. But from my perspective of helping guys when they're performing, play with freedom and enjoy themselves, I think stats can sometimes get in the way.
All right, now back to Kevin. Kevin, what do you do to help people create freedom? I mean, how do you free people up to move the needle? What do you do to help somebody to figure out to move the needle?
Well, I think that you start kind of looking at sabermetrics as let's say a science. There's a lot of different ways you can skin the cat there, right? There's, Doc and I were talking earlier today about different ways that you can use sabermetrics, and I think if you started looking at the shots gained yourself on tour, that's interesting, to some extent, because it allows you to figure out where you rank against the other players. That said, I've had more success being able to kind of figure out the level the player wants to play at and find out the benchmarks that go with that so that they understand what good is. Because part of the confusion about being a good coach is to be able to figure out what's good enough. I will tell you that most of the elite players I've been around, they'll fall on the sword because they think that, if it's not flushed right over the middle, flying exactly right at it, it's no good. But what we do know about it is that tour variance is 5% of the distance. That's a fairly large margin of error, right, over the course of a year. So the problem that I get into in terms of stacking them up against the field, it doesn't really matter how they rank up against the field. If they're trying to play at a certain level, if they know I've got to be this good with the putter, I've got to be this good around the greens, I've got to be this good out of the bunker, this is what my approach shots need to look like, and this is what my tee shots need, the benchmarks for that, and be accountable to that, I think that's a better way to use statistics.
Because then you get into the question, well, where does it end? You can always keep getting better and better and better, but where does it end? But if you establish your own benchmarks, work towards those, that's a much better approach. So
if you can establish the benchmarks, right, and build the training protocols around that, you can actually train people to do it. So here's one of the things I've found. If I have let's say the benchmark is for a player to get the ball up and down 70% of the time around the green, which is a tour benchmark, right?
Say that again.
So a tour level benchmark for the guys on tour, 70% of the fairways, 70% of the greens, 70% up and down, 50 to 60 out of the bunker, and 29 putts. That gets you the tour championship every year, okay? And it's been that way forever, right? So if 70% is the up and down, let's say benchmark for a tour player, one of the things that I found in practice, they have to perform about 10% better than that for it to transfer. So we actually set the benchmarks in practice. Okay, let's go play 10 holes. I drop the lies. 8 of 10's the goal. Let's go see if we can do it. And we train to that. And once they get to the point where they can do that, all of a sudden we start seeing it show up in competition. So being able to take a benchmark, figuring out what do I have to do to be able to kind of make that trainable and transferable, then I think you've got something, right?
I'm going to steal that.
You can borrow it. It's all yours.
I mean, once again, the Rick Lamb.
But I have a question too for the coaches. For you.
Go ahead.
I have players who perform much better in competition than they do in practice because they're much more dialed in, they're much more engaged. In practice, they have a very hard time getting up to get better. And what do you do with those guys?
That's hard.
Because there are guys like that too. And we know guys, we work with guys who, they're practicing, they're goofing around, and they're playing practice rounds, and they're playing horribly, and then they go out in competition and bang. They're dialed in.
The guy that I use to help me with my stats is a guy named Stuart Leong. He's from Australia. He's got a company called Shots to Hold. And he has the capacity with his stat program to be able to say, okay, let's say that there's a value that we're seeing in competition that's not matching up with the benchmark. He has the capacity with just simply a cursor to kind of slide that over and say, is that going to make a difference or not? How much of a difference is that going to make if he closes that delta, if he manages that delta, if he closes that gap, right? So having a tool like that, all of a sudden you can say, okay, is this even worth us pursuing it, right? So, but you kind of going back to it, I think the idea there is that if it's something's happening in competition, you can start asking the questions. Okay, is it a technical error? Is it a tactical error? I mean, is it bad decision making? What do we need to do to help you? Because it could be just nothing more than they're bringing that awareness. Okay, when you go out here, I need you to be more mindful in this specific area.
Hi, this is Tony Ruggiero here, host of the Tour Coach Podcast. Thanks to our great sponsors, Srixon Golf and Bushnell Golf, we're working to help spread the word about the Tour Coach and get more people to download and get more people to listen to it. I have so many DMs every week from golfers, from teachers, just people that are passionate about the game of golf, that love our authentic, our raw approach. It's unproduced. It's just natural. It's from my travels, teaching and working on the PGA Tour, teaching at our retreats, just conversations with the very best in the world of golf. And we want more people to know about it. So Shrixon and Cleveland Golf and Bushnell and I have teamed up to give away some stuff. And here's what you have to do to win and help spread the word about the Tour Coach. All you have to do is go on to Apple iTunes and give a review of the Tour Coach, then screenshot it, and then post it on Instagram or Twitter and tag Shrixon and Bushnell and myself at the Dew Sweeper on Instagram or at Dew Sweeper Golf on Twitter. And what I'm going to do weekly is draw from those people that tag me on social media, as well as Bushnell and Shrixon. And I'm going to do drawings for Wingmans, Dew Sweeper books, new Shrixon golf balls and wedges. We're going to give away a ton of stuff each week over the next month. So spread the word about the Tour Coach, give a review, screenshot it, and post it on your social media channels and tag me at the Dew Sweeper and at Dew Sweeper Golf. And we're going to be spreading the word and spreading the love and helping people play better golf. I think the best thing is stats, and I don't do it as much as you for sure. I use stats as just a guideline to tell me, like, to highlight areas that we might need to pay more attention to, right?
If if it's not good enough, then you need to handle it. Right? If they're not driving it good enough, you need to ask why, right? So I had a chance to kind of work with one of the top female players in the world. No need point dragging her name into it, right? But I was brought into her because she was struggling with her putting. So I had my pal pull up at least whatever he could, and there was not much data on the women. It turns out this girl can hit it a mile, right? And her putting performance was indeed not great. I took her through a putting screen, and she performed beautifully. And I'm like, going back and looking at the data told me that the way she played is she bombed it off the tee, she hit it way down there, right? But she hit it in the rough a lot. Now what happens when the ball goes in the rough? The proximity doubles. Okay, that's just a mathematical truth. So let's say a shot from 100 yards, instead of being able to kind of hit it in there, let's say 5% of the distance, Robert, for her, gets it to 15 feet, she's now at 30 feet.
Tell me which one.
Now she also didn't have a good enough short game to be able to kind of support what she was trying to do. So anytime there's a pin on the edge of the green, she hit in the middle of the green. So her putting wasn't bad. She was putting from too far from the hole.
Right.
So I said, okay, here's the way we're going to address this. Okay, you're going to be mindful of this idea that you got to put the ball in the fairway. Every time you hit in the rough, it's a 60-yard penalty. It's a half a shot every time you do it. All right. So be mindful of where you position and put in the tee, off the tee. You can. I want you to take on more pins, and we're going to work on your chipping. Your putting's fine. And she went from like 8th in the world to number 2 in the world.
That's another really good use of stats.
But like all this stuff where, and I worked with a player a year ago at his best year, whatever. Everything was like, all the numbers tell me I just hit it as far as I can down there. Everything's, if you hit it way down there and you're out of the rough every time, I don't think that's always the best. I really don't. And I know that's old school.
But there has to be a tipping point where if you hit it so far down.
I get that if you're...
So Bryson's performance at the U.S. Open,
right? So
brought that in.
But he chipped and pitched.
We saw that, but the average golfer didn't.
All right, so I'm going to speak to that. All right.
Yeah. Good.
All right. The math would suggest this: that every time the ball goes in the rough, the proximity doubles.
Yeah, that's
right?
interesting.
So now all of a sudden, at 100 yards,
something delivered to me.
It goes 5% of the difference. 5% of the distance, right? Would be a tour average, right?
Yep.
So now all of a sudden, instead of kind of playing from, let's say, 100 yards out of the fairway, they're playing from 100 yards out of the rough. If you do the mathematical equivalent, it's 160 out of the fairway. So it's a 60-yard penalty every time it happens. So the problem is that 30 yards behind their maximum distance off their tee, their birdie production is 50% higher.
Right. That's interesting.
Okay, so that's the math.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the U.S. Open. I was up there. We were a lot of us were up. The fairways where were we?
Wingfoot. It was Wingfoot.
Wingfoot were so hard and so fast that when the ball would kind of hit the fairway, it wouldn't hold the fairway. I think Lucas led driving that week at 59%.
Right, that's right.
An average week, the leading driver is at 85%.
And he was in the top, he was in the top 10 or 12 going the last day. Yeah.
So if everybody's in the rough,
and he still
which is what was happening, right? Now all of a sudden that distance equivalent makes a difference.
Right. So that was the off week where that was an advantage.
Exactly right. So that was just that was a kind of a, you know, it's
so that's
an outlier.
The average golfer doesn't know that.
Right. No.
But then
nobody
last
knows.
year at San Diego, the fairways were not as firm.
And the rough wasn't as down.
And the rough wasn't as down, but there was more penalty for hitting in the rough. And, I mean, you didn't have...
Well, I'll tell you where the rough... At the U.S. Open last year, where his penal was around the green. The fairway rough wasn't too bad, but around the greens, it was awful.
Yeah.
So I do think that, you know, if you dig it deep enough into it and can understand what they're trying to tell you, I think they're very useful. But to your point, just a sweep over the top, I'd like Scott to weigh in on this conversation. He's obviously a bright guy. Also, let's some of the other panelists kind of talk here about kind of what we're up to. Because you surely got some thoughts on it. And so what do you think?
From what Greg was saying, stats to temper expectations. Because I work with college kids sometimes, you think you should be hitting it 10 feet from the hole every time for 150 yards. And I'm like, no, man, 20 feet's really good.
Most people just don't get it.
Right. And so I think a lot of times if you're in a better mood when you get over the ball, like if you hit it and you're in a better mood over the putt because you're like, that wasn't a bad shot, you're more likely to make the putt. Whereas if you get over that ball and you're like, I hit it to 20 feet, I suck, then you're going to miss the putt and then it's going to snowball. And so I think using stats to temper expectations. This game's really hard.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. That's
my favorite quote. Golf is hard.
That's his whole speech. He charges people a lot per month to tell them that. Wayne, what do you think about stats?
Well, I think, I try to get my guys to pay attention to what they're doing. But I think, if we circle all the way back around to where we started with club level golfers and all the way up to tour players, I think if you can get them more disciplined in their practice, doing the same thing, the one or two or three things that really matter to their games that will help them, I think if you can get regular golfers to do that more, I think they have a chance to get a lot better, because tour players do that, like you said, Justin Thomas, 3 drills for the same putting thing for 6 years. Well, he's great at those drills, and when he misses a putt, he recaptures the feel of what he needs to do to continue to be a great putter. And I have players, high school players, college players, and even mini tour guys that they'll do something and they'll do it for a week and they think, well, I got it. Well, they don't have it. They got better at doing it, but they don't have it. And, for your club level golfers, and they'll do it for 3-4 shots and they think they got it. Well, they for sure don't have it. And when the wheels fall off on the golf course, they make triple bogey, double bogey, triple bogey. Well, their round's ruined. It's done at that point. There's nothing they can do to save it because they don't have the firepower to make enough birdies like a tour player does or whatever. So I think if you can get your players, whatever level they're at, to be more mindful of how to practice the 1 or 2 or 3 really important things, get them to get really, really good at it to where they can recapture the magic, so to speak, when they lose it on the golf course. I think they can perform better, and I think their stats will show it. I think their handicaps will go from 18 down to 12 or from 12 down to 5, and, they'll be better players, and college players will do better, and mini tour players may have a chance to get their card, and guys that have their card, they may have a chance to get in that tour championship, So I think it's the same thing. It's just more important, the deeper it gets into playing for a living. Because they're playing for a living. Whenever you're messing with somebody's livelihood, it's pretty dang important, I think. So I'm real careful there and try to be real careful,
in our business.
real patient, because that's a big deal. People's livelihood's a big deal. So,
Kevin, the topic we should have had was that one you had that night about should there be ethics rules in our business. That'll be next week. No, bunch of wouldn't pass. but I think he nailed that though. Like, kind of circling back, like it's about discipline, knowing what. And I just think our job, whether it's using Scott or Greg or bringing you guys in, and you jumped in and helped me with Jillian last week, and I just think it's about like. We were saying the same thing, but saying it different ways. But, staying disciplined to the couple things a person needs to do. And I've never seen a good player, and I've never seen a good player and a good teacher work where every time a ball was hit, They were shooting from the hip, trying something different. I did go watch a guy one time with a TrackMan, and I brought a couple players, and like every time they were looking at the number, and the guy was shouting something different. Well, try this, try that. It's like we got in the car, we were driving back, and the player said to me, if you ever take me to that again, I'll fire you. Right? And I was just trying to get some TrackMan info because I didn't know much about it. Right? But like, I just have never seen that be constructive, and I think that's a good lesson.
Circling back on that, I think that you start kind of looking at players. Most players have a signature about the way they want them. They've got thousands of hours of time logged in their brain about doing it a certain way. So part of that is us respecting that. I mean, I tell the story about Jim Furyk. I mean, I watched Jim Furyk at the Ryder Cup, just destroy a bunch of guys. I mean, it was clearly one of the best players there. The guy's broken 60 twice. He's won everything he could possibly win. I mean, of the guys he grew up with, there's maybe one or two people that played any better than him, and nothing that he does looks like golf. I would have ruined him for sure. As an early coach, I swear to God, I would have ruined him.
Yeah.
Don't be so hard on yourself. Most people would.
Yeah.
But watching him taught me that something. Take some time, figure out if they're competent. Golf is about competence. It's not about anything except can you handle the task that's put in front of you at a high enough rate to allow you to shoot the scores you want to shoot. And so if we can focus more on competence, try to allow for individuality, not feel like we got to put our fingerprints on everybody, and give them some room to breathe, you can help people.
It's one of the best compliments I ever had was early, I don't know, a couple years in. It's very rare. But somebody said to me that Lucas was swinging like Lucas couldn't tell I'd been working with him, right? Just didn't jump in and start changing everything. And I think one of the best compliments a teacher can get is when you got 4 or 5 players and all their swings look different, right? I think one of the worst things anybody can say about is somebody said, I knew that guy was working with so-and-so because that's what all their swings look like, right?
A lot of different ways to skin the cat out there, as we talked about, but I think that I can sit here and tell you that I do believe that it's a lot more about competence and making allowances for people to do their own thing. And if you're good enough at something already, then who am I to say it's wrong?
Right.
I've got to learn how you do it well and make sure that you stay in that pattern and keep doing that. If you can't do it, we'll ask some questions, and we can start that question process and try to figure out what do we want to do about it? Is it a perception problem? You're just not aware of something? Or do we need to actually make a change? We can start asking the questions to try to kind of get to the bottom of it. And always choose the least invasive thing you can do to help somebody.
Right.
All right? And what's the least invasive thing I can do here, right?
I also think there's a difference between coach and tour players and these guys who are trying to get a lot better. Tour players who are trying to figure out why they're already good. And what can we tweak to do? Because they're already great, or they wouldn't have a tour card, or they wouldn't be playing for a living. Todd Green's already really good, going to play Canada. Like, what can I do to enhance that? These guys, I'm trying to get them all to be able to break par, right? But skill sets are different. And what you said, like, the hours logged are different, right? So it's a different deal. I think that's a different type of coaching. Greg, come on, give us some parting shots here. We got about a minute or two left. You and Wayne.
I don't know. I think I might be done.
Well, again, that just circles. When you're trying to get your
it's time to eat.
When you're trying to get your average golfers better, I mean, they've got to pay more and more attention to the little things that they think are not as important.
Right.
The tour players, they've already got those things mastered, and because they have them mastered, they continue to pay very close attention to them. Our job as coaches for average golfers, your country club level golfers, is to try to get them to understand the 1 or 2 or 3 things that really, really matter to their golf games and get them to pay close attention to them. And when they come back and they say they haven't been hitting balls with their alignment sticks or whatever the case may be, our job is to get them back on that and help them enjoy the game more. So, it's as simple as it can be, but not everybody teaches just 12 tour players. We all teach a lot of regular golfers too. And our job is to really make them understand how important those little things are to their game and their ability to cut their handicaps in half and play better golf. So I think that's an important thing for all coaches, especially young guys.
And this is why golf is so interesting, in that the average golfer or the club golfer can look on TV and watch a tour pro and say, I've done what they've done at one point. I've hit that shot, or I've made that putt. in that we always hold ourselves to the highest expectation.
That's why people like the U.S. Open. They like seeing people make bogeys.
Yeah,
They like seeing people make doubles.
But there's no other sport like that.
Like a group of club level golfers don't register with what happened in Hawaii the first week. Right? Guys, this is an awesome place. Kevin, thanks for the opportunity to bring everybody down here.
We're so excited to have you guys.
You and Rick, been awesome. Wayno, thanks for joining me down here again. Me and you are going to have to get a condo down here probably.
Always fun, T.
Greg, just wait till I show you the South Beach nightlife. I've got a new outfit I'm gonna wear. Doc, thanks for bringing all the Swing Catalyst stuff and all the support as always. And Todd, Julio, good stuff. So come join us down here in South Beach. We'll have some fun. Thanks for listening to this edition of the Tour Coach. I want to take a minute and thank Cordy Walker and Golf Science Lab, as well as my sponsors Srixon, Buick, Bushnell, and Vineyard Vines for helping make all of this possible and helping me share my insights with you. If you like what you've heard, why don't you check out more on the Dew Sweepers channel on YouTube, as well as the Dew Sweeper on Instagram, or go to dewsweepersgolf.com to find out more about my teaching, my travels, and where you can find out more about me.